Thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure to be here. Actually, I've just realised I'm standing on an air conditioning vent here, and it's cooling one of my legs very nicely. It's quite an unusual experience, but anyway. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to Caroline Harding for inviting me and the charity I'm patron of, Little People UK, to this UK Genetic Disorders Leadership Symposium. I think it's a fantastic initiative and one which I'm sure will continue to gain momentum long into the future. I'm also aware of the huge commitment and the amount of work it takes to stage an event such as this. So please join me in applauding Caroline and the organisational committee who have done a great job putting this on. Yeah. And while I have this platform, I'd like to just echo what Caroline said earlier about all of us, you know, going away from this event and speaking to the families that we help and the other people in our communities about supporting Genes for Genes Day. You know, putting on events, getting local schools involved, because as she said, if all of us did that, it just spreads and would make a huge difference, the amount of money and the amount of also awareness that can be raised, you know, around genetic disorders and understanding those things. So if you can take one message away from this weekend, that should be it. Thank you. Now, as you can see, I am a dwarf, someone with dwarfism, a little person, if you like. It's pretty obvious, really, unless you're sitting near the back of the room, in which case you're probably thinking, this room seems a lot larger than when I sat down. However, in 1970, when I was born, I know it's hard to believe, I'm that old. I'm 45 to save those of you who are trying to work it out mentally after a couple of glasses of wine. The doctors understood very little about what I was. This was illustrated by the first thing they said to my dad while he waited in the expectant father's room at Epsom General Hospital. "Would you mind standing up, please?" my dad was asked by a doctor. He obliged. You're not particularly short, are you?" murmured the perplexed doctor as he turned to leave. "Is it a girl or a boy?" asked my dad. "Oh, I don't know what it is," said the doctor as he hurried away. So I had the medical profession scratching their heads. Once they had finished scratching, they came to the conclusion that my condition, diagnosed as SED, would cause me to be confined to a wheelchair from a young age and that I wouldn't live beyond my teen years. Now, either they were wrong or I have defied the laws of medicine. Either way, as you can imagine, I'm pretty chuffed. Now, growing up, not literally, obviously, was not a whole lot different than it would have been for any other child. My parents were brilliant because they didn't wrap me in cotton wool, in spite of the fact that they'd been given the doctor's prognosis for my future health. They encouraged me to try everything. If I couldn't reach something, they'd challenge me to get it for myself. This made me very resourceful. I'd look around to see what I could use to solve the problem and feel great satisfaction when I had. They gave me the best education they could afford. I went to an all-boys school called Chinthurst. Now, back then, there were no LSAs, no access laws. A boy, me, who stood just 2 foot tall on his first day at big school, simply had to get on with it. In line with my parents' philosophy, I was encouraged to join in with everything. Sport, in particular, was a nightmare. Our school football kit was black and white, meaning that I would often be mistaken for the ball. When attempting the high jump, I couldn't even leap high enough to get onto the crash mat. For the long jump, my run-up was textbook. Take-off, perfect. However, I always landed with a thud before the sandpit. Being quite a posh school, we played cricket. Now, this was one sport that I was quite keen to try, but I was not allowed. Decades before all the crazy health and safety laws and endless risk assessments, teachers deemed cricket too dangerous for someone who stood no taller than the wicket. What were they thinking? Health and safety gone mad. Now, there was also a little Star Wars reference in there for the geeks among you. Instead, I was confined to the scoring hut, where I would wrestle with a huge scorebook. You know, it's the strangest thing, though. I must have brought the team very, very good luck, because once I started keeping score, my school won a lot more matches than we ever had. One sport I was allowed to do, and was actually quite good at, was badminton. Now, because of my height, I could deliver the most wicked smash which skimmed just over the net, taking my opponent by surprise. I've since become a gold medalist at the Dwarf Sports Association's World Games. One day, I was accidentally good at sport, football. the key word being accidentally. For a change, the team were chasing the actual ball, and I was loitering near the goal, trying to charm worms to the surface by jumping up and down. Out of nowhere, the ball came flying in, bounced off my head, and straight into the goal. I had scored the winning goal. I was celebrated as man of the match, but never told them it was entirely accidental. Now, as well as sports at my school, we also had lessons. Now, one of which was woodwork. At the start of the term, each pupil chose a subject. Choices ranged from small wooden stools to a nice side table, something you could take home to your parents they could use and be very proud of. Now, I was a bit of a maverick. I didn't want to go with the crowd. No. 2 foot 11 inch Warwick Davis chose to make stilts. Now, that is funny, considering I was short, but think of it another way. How was I going to spend a term, the sum total of 8 weeks, making stilts? They're basically just 2 lengths of wood with 2 foot pegs bolted to them. Anyway, I managed to take our entire term cutting, sanding, bolting, and painting until I created my stilts. Once the projects were completed, pupils had to attend the headmaster's office, where he would give them a mark. How the poor man kept a straight face when I walked in holding my stilts aloft. I'm sure he tells this very story at dinners to this day. When I was 11, my life took a completely new direction. An event occurred that would indelibly lay down my career and life paths. My grandmother heard a radio announcement from Lucasfilm, the makers of Star Wars. It said they were searching for short people to be in the next installment of the Star Wars saga, Return of the Jedi. Now, my grandmother knew I was a huge, not literally, Star Wars fan, so she decided to tell my mum, who immediately phoned Elstree Studios. Now, initially, they said they had everyone they needed. They'd been inundated with calls, but she somehow persuaded them. She told them I was a huge Star Wars fan and possibly offered them cash. I don't know. But they invited me up to Elstree Studios in London for a meeting. Now, I didn't have to audition. Normally, when you go for a film, you have to audition and win the role. I met with a production assistant, and she said, do you like Star Wars? I said, yeah. She said, would you like to play an Ewok? And I said, what's one of those? And she said, well, go back down to the wardrobe department and get measured up for a costume, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. And that was it. I purely got the part because of my height. Now, as well as me, there were 40 or so other short people. They ranged in age from teenagers to pensioners. It was the first time I'd met other people like me. I still looked up to the adults, but not nearly as far. It was an amazing experience. All of a sudden, I was not alone. There were other people like me. I formed friendships on that film that have lasted to this day. Now, I was very fortunate Return of the Jedi was not to be a one-off experience. That lucky break led to an association with Star Wars creator George Lucas and the Project Willow that he wrote specifically with me in mind. Now, my work in acting has also given me more than just a living. It's given me something that can't be given a value. In fact, it's priceless. Love. In 1988, I met Sam while working in the theatre. Now, she has a different, more common form of dwarfism, achondroplasia. We married on the 29th of June, 1991, I remembered, and had our first child on September the 11th of that year. Now, I know what you're thinking. That was quick. Well, let me tell you a little fact. It's a little known medical fact, this. The smaller ones bake quicker. That should put paid to any rumours of any premarital shenanigans to rest once and for all. Now, after birth, Lloyd laid in a cot next to his proud mum while I introduced his grandparents and other assembled relatives. It was perfect. However, later that day, Lloyd's condition deteriorated. He became pale and seemed to be struggling to breathe. Doctors decided he needed to go to an infant equivalent of intensive care. Peterborough's unit was full, so during the night, Sam and Lloyd were taken by ambulance to Queen's Hospital in Nottingham, where there was a space and the necessary life support equipment. Lloyd was ventilated for 9 days. However, no amount of equipment and medical know-how could alter the fact that Lloyd had inherited both mine and Sam's genetic condition, known as double dominance. In these cases, it's rare for an infant to survive. Lloyd graciously went to sleep in the arms of his mum, aged 9 days. Of course, we were both devastated, and it took many years to deal with the grief that resulted from our loss. It has made us stronger and determined to learn more about playing the genetic lottery. not only for ourselves, but for other people in similar situations. We were introduced to the brilliant Professor Rodek at UCH London, who was a pioneer in fetal medicine. With a little help from a few genetic samples from me, he was able to diagnose Sam's next pregnancy in the womb. Fortunately, the baby had inherited just my condition, SED, so the prognosis was good. Annabelle was born on March 28, 1997, but was immediately admitted to the special care baby unit with breathing difficulties. Sam and I feared the worst. Had Professor Rodek been wrong? Annabelle was on a ventilator for 3 days, after which she decided she'd had enough of the tubes and wanted to breathe for herself. Fortunately, she had only inherited my SED gene, so would survive. But what of the other complications that come with SED? Annabelle had talipes, her left foot was turned inwards, and had a cleft palate, which made feeding from a normal bottle impossible, and her hearing was impaired. For many people with genetic conditions, what people see is only the tip of the iceberg. Now, thanks to the care and brilliance of these specialists, doctors, and nurses, Annabelle left hospital a healthy 2-month-old and has not looked back since. Now 17, she has had more than her fair share of surgery and pain, but this has made her into a stronger person. Somebody who has empathy with others and has already contributed so much to the world. She is a grade A student and is now forging a career in acting, having appeared in several films and is a regular in the award-winning CBBC series, The Dumping Ground. Our son Harrison has had much the same journey into this world, a ventilator, feeding issues, and he gave us a lot of heartache, but now 12 years old, he too has so much to offer. Sam and I played the genetic lottery, and although we lost once, we ultimately won. We look back at Lloyd as a positive experience, one which made us stronger, better people. And we have Annabelle and Harrison, who bring us and others so much joy. Our experience taught us that it's important to embrace not only who you are, but what you are. Your condition informs the person you become. To this end, we celebrate our dwarfism. Sam has made it her life mission to help others with the 200-plus dwarfism conditions through the charity we co-founded, Little People UK. It aims to help and offer friendship to individuals with dwarfism and their families, to educate society, to bring about better understanding, which in turn leads to acceptance, to unite the medical profession and share expertise about dwarfism and related conditions amongst doctors, but ultimately to celebrate being small and to use the charity's strapline, be positively unique. On behalf of LP UK, I would like to express a big thank you for the grant awarded by Genetic Disorders UK, which will allow 30 members of the charity to experience a residential trip to Lee Green Activity and Development Centre in Derbyshire. Thank you. As a family, our story is still being written. The end is something only destiny can write, but for now, let's just say in true fairy tale style, it all ended happily ever after. Thank you.